Welcome back to this episode of From the Suggestion Box, navigating feedback, the good, the bad, and the say what. I know I say this all the time, and I'm so excited to have particular guests, but I legitimately am so excited when I have people come on here to be able to share things that I'm privy to that I can share out. So that's why I'm so excited. So if you have listened to the podcast before, which I'm sure you have, you know that Angela is no stranger to the podcast, but she's visiting us in a different capacity today, which is what I love, because every time she comes back, she brings a different perspective on different things that we're talking about. So Angela, why don't you introduce yourself?
All right. Thank you, Nicole. I'm so excited to be back. Thank you for having us. I'm Angela Williamson, Blood Bank of Delmarva, Volunteer and Community Relations Specialist. So I'm really excited because Anshul is with me, and Anshul is one of the volunteers. He's newer, and he said, "Are you sure you want me to talk about this? I just started." And I'm like, no, really, we do. We want your perspective. So I'm really excited that he's willing to be here and to share his perspective on being a volunteer with the Blood Bank of Delmarva.
Yes. And so, Anshul, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, certainly. Yes, my name is Anshul Gupta, and I'm glad to join today's session, Nicole and Angela, and I'm pleased to share my perspective. So yeah, I've been working in the corporate life for 36 years in various roles, technical program management, agile transformation, things like that. And I decided to step away from the corporate world last year to do more things that are more philanthropic in nature, things that would really appeal to me, you know, in terms of giving to society or giving to public health. So I started a TikTok channel on health and fitness, and I also decided to do some volunteer work. How I stepped into volunteering with Angela actually is I went to donate blood at the Blood Bank of Delmarva here in Newark. Such a great experience from, you know, the reception asking me questions and making sure I was comfortable with using the iPad and all that, until, you know, they asked me further questions to make sure I was eligible for donations. All that was very well done, and done in a respectful, kind manner. And I thought to myself, you know, and I saw some stats on the wall about how one donation saves, I think, 5 lives. It's either 3 or 5. 3, right? Yeah. So I said to myself, that is powerful. And you know, I've been wanting to spend my time on other things besides the health and fitness videos, something that's meaningful, right, to give back. I'm also exploring other volunteer opportunities with college, but this one, you know, kind of felt right to me. You know, after that experience, the user experience, and then just seeing how I could help with public health. I saw Angela's name on the board. We're saying, we're looking for volunteers, loud and big letters. So I signed up. So awesome. Yeah, so I do greeter work. I'm going to do ambassador work also for Angela, and some office, you know, accounting type of work right now.
This is great. This is great. So much of what you said has attributed to Angela's leadership, because none of what you experienced was happenstance. All of that was training. All of that was understanding what people need when they are coming in, how they should be treated, how that whole experience should be. So the fact that you are testifying to it and don't even know it, I just want to stop and say, good job, Angela. Well done. Well done.
Thank you.
Volunteers. I love it.
Thank you. I do give credit though, because some of those he mentioned are staff, so that are paid staff that get their own, you know, training. So kudos to them. And I am, of course, going to be sharing this with them because it's incredible. It's a teamwork here. And that's what I've really worked hard to do, is to, and to keep the volunteers integrated in with the staff. So it's seamless. You don't even know who's paid and who isn't. That's kind of the point.
And that is how it should be. So Angela, I have a quick question. Does any of what happens like in the training with the staff, does any of that tie into your onboarding? Like, is any of that threaded in there at all?
Yes. great question. I have asked and asked and asked, and last year I was included in the new hire orientation. And so every single new staff that's coming into the Blood Bank of Delmarva, I get 15 to 20, maybe 30 minutes with them. So I get to talk about volunteers and why we have them and how it helps the staff and that they're part of the team and that, you know, I ask the staff, have you ever been a volunteer? And most of them say yes in some capacity. And so I say, okay, you're getting paid here and you're volunteering somewhere else. It's not like you turn into a whole different person between here and there, right? You're still the same person. And so when volunteers come in, it's not like those volunteers or those them people, like it's not just the volunteers, it's part of the team. It's a pay status, right? They don't get a paycheck in dollars and cents per se. But like I said, and I just had a training right before this session actually. And, you know, I say they get paid in thank yous and appreciation and the smiles and the impact and everything that they're gaining from it. So that's definitely has helped all of the staff know who I am. And so when I do ask about volunteers, they'll know who I am, which is great. So I appreciate that from HR standpoint for them supporting me in that way.
Kudos to teamwork and HR. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's talk about how we got here today. So Angela and I were doing something else on the side, and Angela was talking about Anshul, and she was just like, oh man, I had the best day today. I had a volunteer tell me that he never really thought much about this volunteering stuff before, but now that he's tried it, he loves it. So, Anshul, is that true?
That's true. So yeah, let me tell you let me kind of add some color to that.
Oh, add some color.
Angela and I chuckled about this in the office the other day. So I was talking about my work at Fortune 500 companies, pretty proud of it. But, you know, I was a skeptic of volunteerism because you're used to like performance planning and performance management, all those things, you know, objectives and key results. And that's how you do measurements of your company and frankly, of your staff, right? So I've had that mentality for 36 years because I grew up there after college. I literally grew up in corporate America, which is fine. It was good. I loved it. I thrived in it. But so my perspective of volunteerism was, what type of staff, you know, will you get? Will they be accountable? Will they be reliable? Will they be dedicated? You know, so that was of course, that's the skeptic in me. And that's my personal perspective, right? So what changes?
It's also the perspective that a lot of people have. So I'm glad we are having this conversation.
Yeah. So my ex-spouse actually used to volunteer, and I used to say to her, "Why don't you just do paid work instead?" So I was a skeptic even on a personal level. So stepping away from the corporate world, one of the reasons I stepped away is that I wanted to do something meaningful to my passion, to my spirit. So when I joined Angela's organization, I've been very impressed with the onboarding process, the orientation process, and then the way they just train me. Basically, it's on-the-job training with very experienced people who know all the answers, right? And the tasks are well laid out in Word documents. So it's like, it's easy to get in and do it fairly well. The greeting part, you know, I'm still working on it, you know, to smile a little bit more and all that stuff. But yeah, I'm a natural smiler anyway. So, but anyway, does that answer the question about, you know, that's kind of where my shift occurred, is actually doing it hands-on. And then from a performance, so let me go back to the metrics piece, you know, working in corporate America, where metrics are very, very vital to measuring the health of an organization or of a project, right? Just because I'm a volunteer doesn't mean I can't be excellent at what I do.
Stop! Hold the breath! Let me sink in, please! Please say that again! Please say that again!
Just because I'm a volunteer doesn't mean I can't be excellent at what I do. You know, so, you know, Angela's gave me these projects. I'm just just doing them using my skills from the corporate world, project management, office skills to kind of get it done. And I'm eager to do more, actually. Right now they have these designated roles and I'm fitting into them, that's fine. I told, Angela, I'll do, multiple things. So just think about it where I can help you, and I want the work to be gratifying and have variety also. That's important to a guy like me, I think, just because of, where I've come from. I'm used to that multitasking, complex relationship building, project management type of environment. And volunteering and how it supports organizations can definitely benefit from structure. And I see that right here at BBD, the structure that I think Angela and team have set up. I'm not sure of the genesis of that, but right now I'm working within it. So.
Awesome. Okay, so how did the conversation come about that day that you felt so compelled that you had to tell Angela, I think my mind has changed about volunteering?
Well, Angela was talking to me about the ROI on volunteering.
Oh, okay.
And I was saying 390% is an amazing number. And then we started talking about, okay, I said, what do they exactly do? You just start spilling it out, Angela, what they do. Right?
Yeah.
You're just, in terms of, working with the staff, you're not paid, but you're doing the work and you're spreading the word of the vision of this company, the vision of our mission through the volunteers. And through that, you're able to recruit more blood donors and more volunteers. So this is how you're building up that nonprofit business in a very powerful manner. Paid people, they won't do that because you have to pay them to do that specific thing. Volunteer people will do it, and you can recruit people. And this is how you can expand your reach. Then it clicked into me. Then it clicked that a volunteer workforce should be a part of a company's budget, I believe, a company's operating plan. It has to be set up properly. You have to train people leading it, of course. But I think it adds value, in terms of helping also the company with its culture.
Yep. And can I say, I did not pay him to say all of that. I very much appreciate it. And also, this also started, remember, Anshul, there was the workspace that volunteers are in. There was a survey that I've had donors filling out about volunteers. And he saw that survey and he's like, oh, and you're doing surveys too? I was like, yeah, that's what I'm just doing these things because that's, goes with ROI and results and impact. And so I wanted to do that survey. So that was another thing that kind of prompted it, was like this whole conversation about what all goes into it.
Angela, it was so funny. Literally, as soon as you said that, I was about to say, I promise y'all, we did not pay him ahead of time to say any of this. I promise you. Anshul, you were going to say something?
Yeah, what I like about the survey is just to jump on what Angela was saying. It's a way of measuring. So that appealed to that measurement part of me, that project management part of me. With surveys, I saw the people's ratings. There was like, I think 78 questions. You could easily score them, right? And this is how you can measure the effectiveness of your volunteer workforce and, and what they do in terms of tangible deliverables. In our case, bringing in blood donors or, helping them, ushering them through the experience. Let me rephrase that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And can I say, there's another volunteer who also came from corporate America, and she worked with a company that did mergers and acquisitions, highly technical skill set. And I was talking to her and I'm like, can you help me with ROI? Like, my numbers are not my thing. Like, they boggle my brain. And she's like, oh, that's so easy peasy, da, 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 da. In like 3 hours, she had put together an Excel spreadsheet. All the sheets were linked to each other with formulas and all this stuff. Like, all I had to do was plug in the numbers, and voila, there's a return on investment number. And that's where that came from that Anshul was talking about.
Using the skills of the volunteers and the skill sets that they have to enhance. And so there's a couple of things that I hope people get out of this is that Anshul kind of alluded to it. Yes, you might have your general roles that you think are very specific, but my whole philosophy has been, if you have a skill set and it can work here, let's go for it. You know, I am, unless it is something that is just contrary to the mission of the organization, if it is something that you are skilled at, every organization, regardless if it's corporate or nonprofit, has these skill sets for people that need to get things done. Let's integrate it. Why not, right? If somebody has that skill and that is somewhere that they are brilliant at, make it a part, bring it in, use what you have.
Anshul, can you talk more about what you said? I think it's so powerful that in addition to paid workforce, you have a volunteer workforce. Can you tell us, like, expand that a little bit more, what you see that to look like?
Let's say you have a volunteer workforce that is, acting in a department doing administrative work. A hypothetical example, right? Administrative work is pretty important, like this mileage reconciliation, some sort of like accounting work, accounting work. So if you have a volunteer workforce embedded in your department, right, you can have them actually leverage the tools in your own center of excellence and use that to execute those operational activities. So that's one piece of it. That's just in terms of, delivering for a department.
Yeah.
And then when you think about the other aspects, the culture aspects, volunteers create a positive atmosphere. I saw that at BBD and in the environment, because everyone is so pleasant to the volunteer. The staff is very pleasant, and volunteers are pleasant in return. Now, in return might not be the right word, but actually, Angela, your guidance and your documents have said, introduce yourself, smile, things like that. So it's a two-way street. I see that. So I think if you have volunteers embedded in an organization or in a department, you can achieve that positive, let's say, interactions within your department, and therefore uplift the culture, and uplift in the sense, make it a positive, smiling, embracing sort of culture.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
But you need leaders to be able to work with HR and build that integration. I prefer to call it embedding. And maybe start with a department that's relatively easy to do it in. You have to kind of think it through. But that's where I was coming from, Angela. And this way, it can be part of the organization's workforce. You're not paying them, but you have tangible deliverables from them. But you need leaders to instill a sense of accountability involved. I mean, there's pros and cons. You have to kind of work it through. But I see it as being totally conceivable. And Angela, when you mentioned the 290%, it's very believable. And I think this is something that we can consider kind of expanding upon, or, with other organizations. It's easier said than done, but I think it's of value.
As you mentioned, you're coming from a Fortune 500 company, and I know a lot of companies these days, they are instilling corporate volunteerism. They are instilling like corporate social impact and volunteerism within the company. When you were working for that organization, for that company, did you volunteer at all with them?
I'm ashamed to say no. And this is probably because of a couple of reasons. I was busy, so I didn't do the work, nor did I really believe so much in the value of it at that time.
So would it be, can I ask now, like, if you knew then what you knew now, do you think that story may have been a little different?
Knowing now what I know, I would have, in my previous leadership roles, tried to build that as part of my team as well. I would have tried it. I did interns. Yeah, I succeeded in getting interns in, but I should have taken the next step to do volunteers. I mean, in hindsight.
Right, right. Well, hindsight is 2020. We all know that.
Yeah.
And I think that that is something that's very important to look at, because often, depending on the organization that you are with, sometimes interns are paid, sometimes they're unpaid. And so if they're unpaid, they will fall under volunteers because they're unpaid. It's just kind of like a different level of volunteer. And so, but even with you having that understanding of how interns work and the value of internships, I think that was a good foundation, or like even like a foundation.
A frame of reference to start from.
Yeah, to start from, that led you into what's going on with volunteers. So I'm so sad, because we did have a guest that was going to join us today who is coming from the opposite viewpoint, where she was actually staff. She was somebody who was on staff that I work with at an organization. And she was like, I don't have time to waste with volunteers. Volunteers are just like, she didn't necessarily discount them, but she also didn't understand the extreme value. And then once I had an opportunity to work with her and I was like, hey, just trust me on this, try this, trust me on this, try this, and things started to work, she actually did a LinkedIn post that was like, my mind has forever changed. I will be using volunteers forever. They are valuable. They are this, they are that. And I was like, so Angela, when you had that same moment about Anshul, I had that same moment from her. And I was like, I was hoping to get everybody on here at the same time, but that's okay. I'm going to have her back another time and we'll talk about it. So, Anshul, what's next for you? Like how, because you said you started not very long with BBD. So what's the future of volunteering looking like there for you?
Yeah, I'm exploring two avenues right now. One is expanding my time with BBD, doing ambassador roles. Secondly, I'm also interested in helping college students get into the professional workforce. So I'll be volunteering at University of Delaware as a professional coach, a leadership coach.
Nice.
Mentoring students in terms of the skill sets that are needed to jump into the workforce.
Nice.
So
nice.
Those are the two avenues I'm pursuing. In addition to the health and fitness, which is a passion of mine. I'm not sure if I call it volunteer work. It's more of a thing I do.
That's all right. It's all right.
Anshul, I have a question for you. After the experience that you've had, what are three things that, let's say you are going to another organization, like what are three things that you would want to make sure that a volunteer manager knows coming from a volunteer, that if I'm going to come volunteer at an organization, these are the things that, from Angela's example, oh my gosh, make sure you have these three things.
Okay, very good question. Number one, a robust on-training and orientation process. The way to start the relationship will set the tone for the future. Okay. Number two, having information easily accessible for future reference. I'll give you an example. There's an FAQ document on blood types. I look at it once in a while to make sure that once I step into the ambassador role, I'm equipped to answer those questions well. I consider this different than the onboarding process because I know this information could change in the future. So it's really upkeeping my knowledge and making sure that that source of knowledge, that knowledge base, is easily accessible. Number three, I would say, is making sure that volunteerism is on the horizon with human resources as a functional unit, or as a function in the organization. You need allies in the corporate world to make your case. You can't make your case by yourself. My suggestion, based on what I'm hearing, is that the best way to gain traction in a corporate environment would be through finance and HR.
So you are telling volunteer managers to make friends
With finance
with
and
HR and finance.
Yes.
Building those relationships, because those relationships can help create buy-in.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yep.
I promise y'all, we did not pay him to say any of this. Woo! Yes, I love it. And I love what you said about that robust onboarding and training, because I have always said retention starts at recruitment. Retention starts from that first day when that person comes in. From there, it either blossoms or you, like you said, that first, it's that I want to say like that first impression that you make. And if that first impression is kind of like, I mean, they might stick around for a little bit, but they're already kind of like, I don't know, as opposed to, oh my goodness, this was so great. When is next? And how can I do more? Just like yourself, you're like, okay, cool, that was great. How can I help here? How can I help here? And I believe that really that does happen at onboarding. Yes. So Angela, you are just getting all kinds of kudos today.
Thank you.
Play this podcast interview in your next what's it called? Annual review with your boss.
I know, right? I will. Believe me, I'll be sharing. Oh no, it's all good. But it is, I think, onto what you said, like relationships. Like I've been at the blood bank 6 years. And so I started the fall of 2018. And then there wasn't a lot of volunteer foundational things put into place. There were some volunteers here, but all of those things that Anshul was talking about, like those are things that I had to put in place, the handbook and the training and what does that look like and the role descriptions and all of those basic things that are so important to that foundation level. I was able to put in most of that before COVID hit, thank goodness, because COVID, as we know, just, blew up everything. But it also created opportunities, COVID did. So it was interesting because before COVID had hit, I had said, do we want to have greeters? And I put together a position description and nobody was really like buying it. Like the staff was kind of like, yeah, we don't need them, whatever. All of a sudden COVID hits. Now we're taking temperatures at the door and now we're doing like all this stuff. And they're like, can we get greeters? Can we get greeters? I was like, oh, okay, sure. I happen to have that role description. I'll see what we can do. So it's, so it's been a process for sure to get to this point. And having HR, connections and talking to them and being kind of like the broken record, like, can I do this? Can I be involved? Can I be involved? It wasn't like every day, but on a somewhat regular basis, I'd be like, so can I be part of that new hire stuff, pretty soon? It took time, for that. Also, it took time to build relationships. And I've heard this over and over, so it's not new, but I had to start with the department that was the most open to having volunteers where we already had them. And then I just helped build that up, right? And then other people were like, oh, well, that was kind of handy. Like, can they do this? Can they do this? And in fact, there's a different role that I had suggested where they would help out on the floor, like stocking supplies and talking to donors. And again, the staff and the situation wasn't quite ready. But then move forward about a year, then a different supervisor, different staffing. Sometimes it takes a change in staff. But then she came to me and said, can we have somebody do da da da? And I'm like, I got that on the shelf. Let me pull out that. Not the volunteers aren't on the shelf, never on the shelf, but the position description was on the shelf. And so, I pulled that out and, we reworked it so it worked for that moment. And now we have college students. Speaking of Anshul, you can bring college students over to the blood bank now to help out with the donor care staff support. And so, there's all these connections that have just taken time and effort and repetition to keep going. And so I think in this role, you have to be resilient and have a bigger picture, but understand the current context of where you are and where you want to go, and keep aiming for where you want to go.
I love it. I love it. All good things. All good things. Something that Anshul said a little bit earlier that I think is really, really important for us to, as volunteer managers, to hear, especially if you worked in like nonprofit for all of your life, right? One of the biggest differences that I've seen from being on the corporate side and being on the nonprofit side is structure. I have to completely agree with that. And so a lot of times we have people who are volunteering, who they are coming in from the corporate side and they're used to structure. So if we have a lack of it, it can be frustrating because it's like Anshul said, he was like, we know how everything, we know exactly when we're doing it, how we're doing it, et cetera, because they're built to get things done. And then they come in and it's kind of like, well, if you don't have your job positions or job descriptions yet, it's like, well, what am I doing? Well, however whatever you think makes you feel good and however you think you can get it done. Which, I mean, ideally sounds okay, but then there's a lot of miscommunication because what you might needed to have gotten done and what they thought was important to get done may not be the same thing. And then there's like, oh, we didn't get, we're behind on the, so having that structure can help get things started. I'm not saying be so structured that, you are in a box and nothing can come out of it, but just general, like having something as small as understanding the expectations of this is what the expectation is of this. This is the standard. Do you have any great ideas that can enhance it? Cool, let's work with that. But at least you have a basis and there's that understanding. And it prevents a lot of, oh, well, I didn't know that's what you wanted me to do. And it prevents a lot of confusion and having to have difficult conversations down the end. Like it's proactive and you get it done at the beginning. Angela, I love what you said about process and time and working with the departments that already have volunteers. One of my supervisors used to always say, work with the willing, work with the willing. And when people see that things are working for them, it'll catch people's attention and be like, oh, hey, let's have that conversation over there. And a lot of times getting buy-in is like going, if you create a budget, if you have an opportunity to do a budget, run it by the people in finance and like, hey, I want to get this is your expertise. I'm not good with numbers. Can you look at this? Is there something that I'm missing? Something that, get their buy-in that way. Go to them for advice. Go for them to get their ideas on how to make things, how to help improve. Not because if it improves for your department, it's an overall organization improvement, not just like, oh, you're helping me. No, we're all in this together. And, having HR review your documents like, hey, do you have time we want to make sure that we're on the same page. And I want to make sure that from the HR lens that we're, that's how you start building those relationships and starting those conversations. And then that way it's not like, I've heard people say a lot of times when building relationships with fellow employees or with volunteers or whatever, people just walk up and just go for the ask. And it's like you saw somebody on the street and walk up and just ask them to marry you without even like, can we get that first date? Like, hey, can you let's work into it a little bit.
Yeah. And what are the benefits that you feel like you've gotten out of volunteering? Personally,
it gives me a sense of purpose, after stepping away from the corporate life and really, indulging in my hobbies and other pursuits. I still feel the need to use my skills that I acquired in the corporate life, the speaking skills, the negotiation skills, the people skills, the management skills, all those good things. I feel the need to continue to exert those skills. And number two, the sense of purpose and the schedule, the structure that volunteering gives you, and the ability to pick your schedule. That's important to me because there's a lot of other things I want to do, and this is something that has value. It's important to me, but I have a lot of flexibility in terms of, depending on the role, when I can do it. Yes. Well, I do see though, one of the things that I don't know how to solve this is how do you measure accountability? Like that's something, you know, that I'm sure you're faced with, but that just comes to my mind, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. That is an issue for the organizations that have volunteers, right? Are they showing up? Are they doing what they're supposed to be doing? And
Right.
that comes back to evaluation, and what Nicole loves to talk about was feedback. And so I know for me, it kind of depends on the role. Like you're working on a very specific individual project that has a start and an end. And so once that's done, then we'll know if you got it done or didn't get it done, like, and we've touched base, like, hey, are you coming in? When are you coming in? When you can finish up? Like, there's that communication that needs to happen, but accountability does need to happen in some way, shape, or form. And it depends, I think, on the role and, what the expectations are.
Speaking of feedback, Anshul, do
Yes.
you have an opportunity to provide feedback regarding the program?
Oh yeah. Oh, definitely. Whether I'm able to do that, whether I'm able to effect change is a different question. It's very unlikely, and that's fine. As long as I bring it forth, I make that suggestion visible. I think I've done what I should be doing. And if it has legs or not, there's other data points that I don't have access to, which makes it impossible for me to really kind of own the whole thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And after having this experience, what are the requirements and expectations that you have when you're looking to volunteer at an organization that you're now looking for that will increase the likelihood of the chances of it being a great experience?
Number one, it needs to appeal to me intrinsically.
Mm-hmm.
The service that we're providing. That's the number one thing. Number two, the environment must be, to me, I kind of like the corporate environment, and this is just a personal thing. It needs to have some flavors of the corporate environment, which the blood bank does. It's a small, but but a number of small offices, but it's close enough. Those are pretty much it, I would say.
I love that because in everything that we are doing, when we are putting our message out there for recruitment, when we are sharing on social media, we are sharing all of those things, exactly literally what he said in our messaging, we have to be able to communicate what our why is, what our organization is about, and why we're doing it to attract the right people. Number one, right? Like, don't be vague with it. And that's like, and we've had these conversations before. It's the difference between come volunteer with us, as opposed to save a life, give blood with us. Like it's a whole different message when you can catch them in the moment. Um, and then that culture, and like he said, that corporate culture is important to him. Some people, they will run from corporate like faster than whatever, but it's important that in everything that we're doing, we are sharing that so that people who are attracted to that culture, we get. And for people who are not attracted to that culture, it's okay because they know what they're signing up for and they know this is not what's for me, which is fine because we want people to find their niche and what is right for them. But if we don't communicate it well, even in the recruitment part or even in the awareness part, we will get people that come in who are like, oh, maybe this isn't for me, but that's okay because that's also what the orientation is about too. So but I think he nailed it, like intrinsically, if he connects. So making sure that our messaging, whatever it's like in the marketing and the recruitment and like I said, everything on social media, all of our stuff is sharing that why and why it is so important to attract other people who are going to, who will want to join that organization. Like for me, I know if it has anything to do with sick babies, I'm running the other direction. I can't do it. I can't handle it. I'll be crying more than the kids. They'll be consoling me. I know I can't, as beautiful as the cause is, I can't handle it, right? So if I know that in the messaging to begin with, I'll donate, but then I'll volunteer somewhere else because I personally can't handle it. So, wow, this has been amazing. Anshul, is there anything else that you would like to add?
Many people underestimate the value of volunteerism, but I think this is something that's underestimated, at least from my lens, in terms of the value add and the amount of saturation we have of volunteerism in the country. I think we can do a lot more, but you need receptive thinking to it, and that's where I think people like you guys are helping to spread and to create the message. Most importantly, I think that's what you're doing, and also through media like this, getting it out to people. I think we need to continue that.
Right on.
Love
Angela,
it.
what else do you have, Angela?
Just one quick point back to what you were talking about, like the messaging. I had a volunteer that was like, this is too much training. I can't deal with this. Okay, then this isn't the right fit for her or him or whoever it was, for that person. And so that wasn't the right fit. And so I think it's important to not put up too many barriers, right? So we can have the least amount of barriers as we can, right? I think that's very valid to look at. Like, what are the things that we really need to have in the application, the training, the whatever. But to that point, we are a blood bank. We are federally regulated. And so there are some things that will be very regulated. Now, there's other things that volunteers do that are not regulated federally. And so there's a little bit more leeway. But we, because of those things, our organization needs to be pretty strict on training. Like, if there's bloodborne, if there's blood or fluid somewhere, don't touch it. Like, there's just certain things that could be inherently a danger. Does it happen very often? No, thank goodness, but the risk is there. And so it's those kinds of things that I think that it almost like filters out volunteers. So as long as you're making yours as accessible as possible to as many people as possible, but keeping all the safeguards that you need for your organization, then that helps volunteers thinking about coming to your organization to really be the right volunteer match, right, for that organization. So I think that's really important too, to be as accessible as possible, but keeping the things that you need to keep for your organization. I love Anshul and all the volunteers that we have. It's just incredible, the skill sets. And I figure I don't have to be the smartest person in the room. If I can find the right people, they make me look really good. So, and I give them all the kudos. And when I'm talking about reports or this ROI report that this other volunteer did, I'm like, hey, this is the volunteer that put this all together. Like, I'm always referring back to the volunteers and showing and shining the light on the skill sets that are available from people like Anshul, who are coming with very high level skill sets and still want to do good things with the skill sets, but without the 8 to 5 or 7 to 7 p.m. schedule, or all of those commitments that come with being a full-time paid.
Angela and Anshul, thank you so much, sharing your thoughts, sharing your wisdom. And I promise you all, we did not pay this man. He came in and is just singing to our hearts. Woo! Goodness gracious, thank you so much. So listen, if you enjoyed this, please like, subscribe, share with your friends, share it with other volunteer managers, share it with people who might feel skeptical about volunteering, all of those things, because as we find our place to share the gifts that we have in our own communities, we build stronger communities and ultimately a stronger world. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of From the Suggestion Box, navigating feedback, the good, the bad, and they say, what? And we will talk to you later. Bye-bye.